Good evening, everyone, and welcome to SPORE, Spiritual Principles Without Recovery. And I just want to welcome everyone on this first day of a new year. Isn't that awesome? So it means you get to walk out of last year into the new year. And actually for me, last year was a good year. So I'm looking forward to how much better it's going to be and how much more God has in mind for this year. So tonight, what are we going to be talking about? Well, before we do that, what are we going to do? Serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, so what you are not changing, you're choosing. You know, the more you think about that, it starts making a lot of sense, but the problem is it puts a lot of responsibility on you, right? So if you keep on doing the same thing and there's no change, that's because you're choosing not to change, right? And I think a lot of times that we look at that differently. You know, it's kind of interesting. I don't necessarily use this particular definition, but what do they say? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results could be a possible case of insanity, right? Well, isn't that kind of the same thing? If you're still going through the stuff that you've been going through and nothing's changing, then there's something in your life that you're holding on to. And that's what we're going to look at. So here we are on the first day of a new year. And what is it? I want to talk basically about new beginnings. And, you know, Sunday we basically talked about that. And we've kind of carried that on what does the new year look like? So there's a whole lot of opportunity, and yet some people, believe it or not, are going, I think this year's not going to be that good. Wow. Well, here's the thing. It will be whatever you begin to make it. So if you're not willing to speak over the year, you're already in trouble, right? So I'm believing this is going to be one of the best years of my life, right? And there's nothing that tells me that it won't be, that there's anything different. But how many times have you thought, or how many times have we thought to ourselves, I can't change something in my life because that's just who I am, right? I wish I could change it, but that's just not who I am. Or how about this one? It's just too painful. I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to look back in my past. And both of those dictate exactly where people are. In other words, some of us believe that our identity is one that's in such a case that I can't make changes. I'm not able to. Maybe the family I came from, or the circumstances that I've been in. And we're going to look at each and every one of those. See, people are held back because they refuse to deal with their past. They're more afraid of the pain, right, than they are getting freedom. They're not willing to pay the price. Right? Everything has a price. Now, here's one of the things that I always think about is, am I willing to make a change in my life that may be uncomfortable for a small period of time but have a major payoff? See, how many things happened to you in your life you had no control over, and they happened? Now, we're going to look at how we can begin to have control over those things. See, they're not just afraid of what the past may have, they're also in a place where they've become controlled by that pain. Their whole life is dictated by what they've gone through. You see, it's hard to go back through and revisit trauma, but that's part of getting through it. Now, I'm not one of these people that, when I do counseling, I don't think that we have to go back there and live in it. And I think that's a misnomer. I've had so many people sit there and go, well, we need to get to the root cause of this, so tell me everything that happened to you. Why? If we understand what happened to you, then we understand that there is a basis for that, and we don't have to have you go back and relive that. But you see, so many people are guided that way that that's what they're afraid of. They're like, I don't want to go back through that stuff. And that's what we get with a lot of survivors. They don't want to go back and experience the trauma because it was too painful. And we don't have to do that. We don't have to live in the trauma because, you see, we're no longer a victim if we're willing to do something about it. If we're not, then guess what you just became? A volunteer. And the thing is so many of us go, but I'm a victim. Well, you may have been. And I'm not making light of it. I'm not trying to say that's a small thing. Believe me, if you knew all my past, you would understand. But here's what I do know. What I know is at some point, I no longer was willing to volunteer to abuse myself. You see, if I keep living in the trauma and I keep allowing that to control who I am, then I literally am being abusive to myself. People say, but you don't understand. You don't know that I don't understand. Maybe I do more than you think so. Maybe it's because of the trauma work that I did and went through. Maybe that made a difference in my life. Was it easy? No. I know what it's like to sit there with all the lights off, sitting there, eating ice cream and tears running down your face because you've just gone through some heavy-duty therapy stuff that it was like, I never wanted to look at that again. But all of a sudden, the freedom came, and things began to change. You have to understand that your past does not define who you are. A lot of times, let me just put it this way. I had this lady that I used to work with a lot, and she would literally say, like most of us say, hey, my name's Paul, and whatever. And in certain situations, I say, hey, my name is Pastor Paul, or I may say my name is Chef Paul, or I may say my name is Paul, and I'm a recovered alcoholic. Just depends on the environment, right? But she would literally say, my name is, she wouldn't even say it, she'd go right into it. She'd be like, I have bipolar issues, and my name is. And then we worked, and she finally said, my name is, and I have bipolar issues, right? And eventually, what happened was, that is not who you are, that's a diagnosis, right? And a lot of us who've been victimized, we continue to define ourselves by an action. We keep living it out. We do things that don't make sense, right? People who are taken advantage of sometimes take advantage of others. People who may have been in a particular situation as a child, molested as a child, they turn around and act out in other ways. You see, a lot of things that happen to us affect our life, but they no longer have to control our life. And that's one of the big differences. So like I said, I had to really look at this for a minute, and I had to sit there and say, you know what? I got to be honest. Just like she did, there's a lot of times that I have defined myself more by a diagnosis than by who I am, right? There have been times that I've been like, well, I can't do that because I'm dyslexic. Well, there's truth to that, but I don't have to live behind that. It can come down to this. I have some issues. Can you help me do this? See the difference? I'm not defined as that's who I am. So one of the things I had to do is I had to look at 2 Corinthians 5:17. And it says, this means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a what? A new person. The old life is gone. A new life has begun. You see, I don't want to live in the old life anymore. The old life doesn't define who I am. Because that literally did define who I was at the time. Thief, a cheat, an alcoholic, addict, and just keep going down the list. But that all is back there. Now here's the thing. Even before I truly knew who Christ was and who I was and who He was, I had already started changing my life. As soon as we make a change in our life, it stops defining who we are. Now here it comes down to this. This is Recovery 101. Do I want to be recognized by who I was or by who I'm becoming? Don't answer that real quick, because let's be honest. When I first came in, there was a little flair about being a little different than the rest of the world. It was kind of nice in a little bit of a way. Hey, I'm in recovery. Because I was so bad that I needed recovery. Right? And God's sitting there going, you have so much potential, and you decide to do some things that cause the detour in your life. And you're proud about that? Sometimes we can be so much in the flesh that we identify ourselves by the flesh and take pride in the flesh. It's not who I want to be. How do I want to be defined today? I want to be defined as someone who is willing to put God first and be of service to others. That's it. Anything else doesn't have any variance on it. So change doesn't work unless what? We're willing to see ourselves differently. Now hear what I said. See ourselves differently. When I weighed 380 pounds, I was 380 pounds. But I could see myself at 350, and then 325, and then 300, and then 275. I had to see that vision before I hit that. Right? When I thought about myself and I first really understood what recovery was about, I realized that I could see myself abstaining from alcohol and drugs and other issues I had in my life for 90 days. And they would give me a chip. And then for 6 months. And then 9 months. And then a year. You see, those little chips actually mean something. Really do. I sat there and I thought the other day, man, that difference between that 30 and 90 day, I can remember thinking, if I just get through one more day. And so what I began to identify with is, I've been sober 45 days. I've been sober 48 days. You hear the difference? All of a sudden it's like, I was sober. I used a word that I couldn't use for a long, long time. See, life becomes different when we're literally willing to look at the potential that God has in our lives, not potential that we've been told. Y'all know, you've heard me say this before, and it's true. I realized one day that potential is a future resentment. Promise you that. There's so many women go, he has a lot of potential. 2 years later, they're going, man, I can't believe he didn't use any of that potential. I'm resentful about it. Okay, it's cool. Whatever. You know. And so the thing is that I don't care what the world says I can do. I care about what God says I can do. That's all that matters, see. And so we got to begin to take action. We have to take action to change. Y'all know that, right? What's the old adage? 2 frogs sitting on a log. One frog decides he's going to jump off. How many frogs you got left on the log? 2. There was no action behind it. Just a decision. How many people in the last 48 hours have made a decision how they live their life this year? Right? Right. What do they got? Future broken promises. Or they can sit there and say this one, I will live to the best of my ability for you. You show me, God. Come on, Papa, show me what you want me to change in my life. And that may happen all at one time while you're writing these things down, or it may happen over 30 days. The most successful time I ever had in actually trying to make a change in my life was when I did it in 30-day segments. Every 30 days I reevaluated. Some things I kept, some things I didn't need to. And what I found by that was I didn't set myself up to fail that way. I began to find what was important. Because you see, a lot of times what I thought was important really wasn't that important when it came down to what Papa had desired for me. And then I began to see that. So let's talk about taking action. So if we're going to take action here, well, let's see. I'm not going to use that story. Let's use this story. How about this one? How about Jesus? Can we talk about Jesus for a minute? Yeah, I hope so. We can't, we're in trouble. Right? So here's Jesus, and he's cruising around with, he's got his posse in hand. They all hanging out. He and his boys going down, and they look over, and there is the Bethesda Country Club. Actually, it wasn't. I'm just messing with you. There was a pool called Bethesda. It was an Olympic-sized pool that everyone was going to hang out in. This has always been amazing to me. What was Jesus doing going there? He really didn't have a reason, supposedly. But he's going there, right? And it's where, so what would happen is the water would start moving. And when the water moved, an angel would come down and stir the water up. And what would happen is there was a healing power in that. Right? And so the first person who could get in, winner, chicken dinner, they walked out totally healed. But if you were the second person, you better hope you got somebody to help you get back out. Because you probably ain't going to come up on your own, right? In other words, you had to have help. So Jesus cruises through there, and he sees this one guy, and he looks at him, and the dude's old, because, man, he's been laying right there every day for 38 years. And Jesus says, hey, what's up? He said, well, I'm here to get healed. Well, it's obvious because he's laying out on a mat, right? He's sitting there, and he goes, how long you been here? 38 years. Ain't missed a day. Been right here. Well, what's he got to do? All he's got to do is when it gets cranked up, he just has to go in, right? So he knows what he has to do, and he wants to take action, but what does he say? I can't get in there before anyone else. I don't have help. If you look at his circumstances, he was ultimately screwed. He really was. He couldn't get up on his own. If he rolled in and he wasn't the first guy, he's in trouble, right? He's on resurrection day. So his circumstances tells him what? Now this is interesting to me. Ain't going to happen for you. That's what his circumstances look like. But he must have had some faith. Because he showed up every day for what? 38 years. How many people have been controlled for 38 years by something that happened to them that far back? But he's hoping something's going to change. Well, it did change. Let's take a look at it. John 5:8. So Jesus told him, stand up, pick up your mat, and walk. Well, that's good. No, check this out. What does it say? Jesus told him something different. Not, I'm going to stir up the water. No, I'm going to help you get in. Right? He didn't say none of that. What did he do? How about this? Let's read a little bit different. Take action and get up and go. And what did he do? You want me to tell you what he did? It says he did that. Said he went, wow. He was open and willing to do something different. Because who was Jesus? Yeah, he was like that, but down here, not real sure. He did a lot of miracles. Not so sure he can do it for me. So another alternative was opened up to get through, to make a change, and it happened. You got to be in a position to be willing to do whatever God himself or Jesus, right, ask you to do. Papa says, hey, I got all the power. You just couldn't see it. A lot of times, God works in our life and we can't even see it. He may be bringing that right person into your life. And I ain't talking about the one that we're like, oh, I'm so in love. I'm talking about the one who comes in and says something to you and it hits you in such a way that you realize, man, my eyes have just been opened. I've never seen it that way before. Or it may be circumstances that cause you to have to move on. And you realize it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Be open to what Papa wants to do in your life. Because it may be way different. I can honestly say this. If I was writing the script of my life from the beginning, nothing would have been like the way that it's happened. So many things have happened. I remember I had a crisis in faith. That's what you want to call it. I just couldn't understand how I could be sober. And because it's like, I don't want to do the God thing. That's just where I was at. I just don't want to do the God thing. I got some kind of relationship that's over here, and I want to keep it over here. Because after all, what is God? Guacamole God. God, can I? Right? Pop up again. Hey, would you let me? And the only other thing I would keep hearing is, no. He was the God of no. But I want to have fun. No. That's what I believe God was. So I go and I'm ready to I'm trying to make a decision. Do I leave recovery because you want me to do this God thing and go try to do it on my own? Or do I surrender to this recovery thing? But then I got to accept God in that way that I only knew him. And out of all the people that could have helped me out was a girl I was dating. She says, you got to go see one of my friends. I'm like, why? She goes, no, really, you need to go see one of my friends. So we go see her friend, right, who just had a baby. And like we show up, and I'm up there and I start talking to her, and she starts describing to me in such a way the relationship with God and how it dovetails into recovery and how it's a part of recovery, and that true recovery you can't do until you begin to let God work on just a little bit. Just give him a little bit, that's all. And it changed my life. I realized, and you see, I struggled with that. Am I going to just have to walk away? Or is there going to be a change? And like I said, the last person. Now, here's the crazy part. The irony to it is 31 years later, she became a sponsor when I needed one at that time in my life. My other sponsor had died. See what I'm saying? Yet, God put her in my life 44 years ago. You never know who you're talking to. You never know who may be stepping in your life at the right time. I have a sponsor who swears up and down that God put me in his life right when he was supposed to. What he was about to go through and what he ended up going through, I had gone through. And I understood. See, that's the whole point. As long as I'm willing to make change, God will meet you there, and he will put change in your way. Not some, we'd all love for God to go, okay, you want change? There you are, man. It's all changed. But that's not a process. And part of change is what? A process. And so I had to become willing to do something different. And so the biggest thing I could do was step 2, right? What is step 2? Come on, guys, let's go. Came to believe. You can all do it together. Came to believe a power greater than myself could do what? Restore me to insanity. What's insanity? See, I love this. People in program, oh, it's so insane. Well, you may have been insane, but that got nothing to do with step 2. Insanity is the ability to make a rational decision and follow through on it. I had never had that particular trait in my life. Matter of fact, the best thing they told me was, whatever you think you need to do the opposite and it'll work for you. And that really did work a lot of the time. You see, that's the point. The change was, what was different was Paul quit trying to run Paul's life. I started letting other people explain to me how they made a change in their life. And I just followed their direction. I swear this is the biggest thing I run into, and it blows my mind, is I have had more people who need to go through change, and what do? They've read a few things, they come back to me, and they tell me how they're going to change. Then my question is, what am I here for? You have all the answers. What do you need me for? Right? Because one thing you got to realize is, you have to realize if you're going to work with people in recovery, they got to be willing to change. If they're not willing to change, man, you're wasting your time. See, I look at it like this. I guarantee you, every one of you guys work for a wage of some kind, right? And so at minimum, your time is worth whatever the wage you're earning. Your time's worth that at bare minimum for somebody to come to you. Now, I may even look at it a little bit differently. I've been doing this thing for 4 decades, and I know what therapists get. And I'll be honest with you, I think I'm just as qualified in this area as probably more qualified than most therapists. So if somebody's going to come and waste my time, I'm not being a good steward. I need to give that time to somebody else. That's the whole thing. Your time is of value. Don't just hand it off for people that don't want it. Let me give you ready for the little secret? Well, here it goes. For sponsors, or pastors, or counselors, first thing is, I have to remember that I am not responsible for your recovery. Who is? You are, right? So either you want it or you don't. But if you want to shut down a sponsor, this is all you got to do. Okay? You go in, and as soon as the sponsor starts talking, you go, oh yeah, I know that. Yeah. Matter of fact, this is what I found out about it. And no, let me tell you all about it. Right? Now they know more than you do, wasting your time. You want me to tell you how to shut a therapist down? You can't. It keeps clicking. But how about a pastor? You want it? Ready? All right, here you go. All you got to do is come to one of us. You can ask Pastor this. He'll verify it. And all you got to say is one thing. God told me. We're done. What can I tell you that God didn't tell you himself? So we're done, right, Pastor? I mean, we're done. So that's what I'm saying. Make sure that if someone is willing to make a change, you do everything for them as much as you can help them, even though they're responsible for their recovery. If they don't want to, don't waste their time. Now, why did I say all that? Don't waste your sponsor's time. Don't waste your pastor's time, right? Don't waste people's time, including yourself. If you're not going to help yourself, go do the do, because that's where you're going to end up anyways. If you're willing to make a small change, we'll hang in there with you. And people want to hold, and they want to help you. But you know what's interesting? Is that even the Bible talks about that. So there was a guy named Paul, and he had like this kid with him, right? Timothy. And so Timothy would tell around with Paul and write everything that Paul would say, basically. And so one of the things that Paul told him, he's like, look, not only do you not want to help these people, they're going to get worse because it never gets better. You see, when we start going down the wrong road, and that may, that may be, I'm not saying sinful road or something like that. I'm talking about when we start going down the road where I know more than you do about me, better be real careful because it's only going to get worse. Because see, here's the thing. I'm the worst person in the world to run my life. And I'm going to keep doing it. Why in God's name would I think it would get better? It can only get worse. So you know what I love this about Paul? Because Paul was pretty frank about things. He's like, these people don't want what we have, got to go. Right? And Jesus even went and said, go as far as and move on. Why is that? Because he's kicking dirt in someone's face? No, he said, I don't want nothing you got. Nothing. And I certainly don't want you to affect me in any way because of your negativity. You're the way you choose to live your life. The way that you choose not to change, I'm not willing to even have any of that in my life. And that becomes so important. You see, one of the biggest things to remember is that change is always for the desperate. I guarantee you, recovery was not your 5-year plan, was it? No. I guarantee you thought to yourself, I just can't wait. I'm going to grow up to be a meth head. That's my desire, you know. Oh, I'm a tweaker. Woohoo! Can't wait to get there. Life's so good. Think I'll go pick up a pipe right now. We don't think like that, right? We sit there and we think, oh my God, I'm going to die if I don't do something different. I've got to make a change. Something's got to change in my life. And it's amazing. You see people that come in recovery, and what do? Oh, thank God I made it. And 2 years later, they're over there talking about, oh yeah, I knew I needed to do something, so I made a choice, and I came in, and you're like, you're about to go out. The ones who keep it are the ones who keep wanting to change over and over and over again. I am so grateful that I am not the person I was at 10 years sober, 20 years, 30 years. I'm glad that I'm the person I am now. Every year my sponsor, when she gets her chip, I look at her and I go, is this the year? Is this going to be the year that everything's perfect? And she always tells me the same thing. I'll let you know when I get there. So what does that tell me? I still got growing to do. I ain't there yet. And you want to know the funny part is? I really don't want to get there yet. I like it. So change for the desperate. Well, how do we change? And we're going to look at Ephesians 4:20 through 24. And I'm going to ask Pastor to keep it up there as we're going through it. So but that isn't what you learned about Christ. Next one. Since you have heard about Jesus and have learned the truth that comes from him. Where does the truth come from? Not me, not you. Keeps going. Throw off your old sinful nature and your former way of life, which is corrupted by lust and deception. All right, we're going to take a look at this one for a minute. Throw off your what? The old way of life. Get rid of it, man. How many times have you gone back to what you were doing and it worked for you? Has anybody ever had a relapse? Did it get better? Did you go, man, I just went back out there and it was so much better than what are you doing back here, right? So it says get rid of that whole life. It's not saying get rid of part of it. It's saying get rid of the whole old life. Because of why? Because it's corrupted. And it is corrupted by what? Lust and deception. If you don't believe that whatever your addiction is or whatever you're trying to get out of doesn't have a very seductive, lustful view to it, man, I've had bottles like talk to me. Y'all ever had that? It's like, you know what I'm talking about? Like, it's like that beer looks so good. That's the best looking beer I've ever, right? And you're going, right. You know what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. But here's the last part of it. Deception. Addiction is what? The most deceptive thing you'll ever deal with in your life. Why is that? Because it's so connected with the enemy. That's why. If he can break down and shame you and break down everything in your life, he won. And how do you do that? One's not going to make a difference, right? Well, I'm just going to run by and score a little bit. Yeah. My dope man probably doesn't have what I want anyways. Am I the only one that's ever had that thought? It's that one. You ever notice that, and I've done a lot of work with people that have been, on meth or whatever. And here's the thing. Every slip always starts with what? A beer. But I'm not a drunk. I just do drugs. Like that's an elevated height or something. I actually heard someone say that one day. They said, well, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a meth head. Like that was a higher deal or something. Anyway, whatever. Let's go. Instead, let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitude. But wait a minute. But I can rethink this through. No, you can't. Your mind is blown. You got nothing going for you, but who can? Let the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitude. You know what I love about that? Is that He has to renew it every day. Isn't that amazing? His mercy and grace is what? Renewed every day. In my life. That's why we live one day at a time. In your life. But I have to take it even a step farther than that. I got to literally look at it and say, okay. I got to let Him not only change my thoughts, but I got to be willing to say, you know what? My attitude stinks. Please, God, help me. And He does it the same way every time. Yeah, they need some help over there. Okay. And then by the time you're through doing whatever they need, changing a tire, whatever it may be, you're like, you know what? You're pretty cool. I feel much better. My attitude's changed. Let's go to 20. Put on your, come on guys, tell me what it is. What does it say here? Your new nature. Well, how do I get a new nature? You ready for this? One step at a time. See, no one has that new nature right as soon as they wake up in the morning and go, ready for you to change that, God. Goes back to the whole concept of the 6 and 7 step. How many people in here have worked the 6 and 7 step? We're going to talk afterwards. Nobody has ever worked the 6 and 7 step. First of all, let's look at what it is. It's about what? It's about our character defects. I got news. Character defects, you don't just go, Lord, I'm going to humbly ask you to remove them from my life. And he goes, okay, done. For me, it went kind of like this, right? And I'll use a real one. God, I got this one character defect. It's not that I lie, I just can't tell the truth. So, you got to help me. I mean, this is years ago. When I was in sales. Y'all do know sometimes salespeople shade the truth a little bit, right? And so, I'm running through this I'm doing houses, manufactured houses. I'm showing these people, this family, this manufactured house. You know, it's the best one out there. And I would always go, honestly, it's the best one. And then I'd talk about a few other things. And then I would be like, you know, it's got one of the strongest thermal rating, honestly, that you would. And this little kid looks up at me and goes, so when it's not honestly, does that mean the other stuff isn't honest? And the first time I ever had to look at somebody and go, kind of that way. You know? And then it got to the point that I thought, then I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I started telling this really nice setup of a lie and had to turn around right in the middle of it and go, actually, that was all a lie. See, I learned something. My old sponsor used to tell me, embarrass sin before sin embarrasses you. So that's how you work the 6th and 7th step. You start as you're living in those character defects and you get a little more into that defect. You go, no, I don't want to do this. So I'll expose myself. Till it gets to the point where you go, oh no, I don't want to go there anymore. I'm done with that one. Guess what? God humbly removed it from your life. Right? Just as a side note, if you ever want to learn about that more, get a little book called Drop the Rock. That's what the whole book is. That doesn't matter how you try to get rid of your own character defects, you can't. Right? All right. So here's the thing. We got to begin to do some other things. We have to be willing to change and realizing that we cannot hold anything back, whatever we do. But by the same token, the things that we let keep us in the same place actually hold us back. So the more I get rid of it, the faster I move forward. We have to be honest with who? Ourselves and others. Come on, guys. What does that sound like? Step 5? Yeah. Being honest with who? Myself, God, and another human being of the what? Of the defects, the wrongs in my life. Ooh. So that means once I do that, I become accountable. And the more accountable I can be, the more changes begin to happen. See, be open to the process of change. And there is. It's a process you got to go through. In other words, be open to the fact that it's not going to all hit you at one time. Because God is a loving God. You realize if he just changed everything at one time, one of two things is going to happen. If I had just walked in recovery and got, boom, sober that day. Well, the first thing that would have happened is I'd figure I could go back out at some point because it'll just happen again. Right? That's the way my mind works. But the second thing is I would have missed all that growth on how to live life and who he was if that's all that had happened. So process is a good thing. But the other thing is that I had to know who I am through pop of God's eyes. You realize once I've accepted and received the cleansing of the blood, how does he see me? You ready for this? Perfect. I tried to convince everybody else I was perfect, and the only one that really mattered was God, and he sees me that way anyways. Because he sees me through what Christ did for me. That's the way he sees it. And so I don't have to walk to him with a bunch of shame or any of that stuff. Because he doesn't see it. So begin to know who you are. And the last is stay in right standing. The Bible calls it righteous. I tried. One day I kept going, I want to be righteous, but the only thing I could understand about righteousness, the way I looked at it, is you had to be perfect. I don't know how anybody But then I started praying about it. And one day I realized, you know what's amazing? As long as I continue to be in right standing with God, even when I screw up, I'm moving in the right direction. And the very last thing, above all, be willing to be someone different. Be willing not to be what you used to be. Be willing what you're. I don't even want to be who I am today, tomorrow, because I want God to keep working, and keep working, and keep working. I think the worst thing in the world is when somebody goes, man, I got this. I've been living the same way for 20 years. That's sad. That's sad. How about, man, you wouldn't believe last year I got blessed left and right, and I can't wait to see what he's going to change in my life this year. Ooh, man, he's probably going to have to get down and do a little digging this time. Because praise God, I keep changing, and the more I change means he's going to go a little deeper. But he's going to go deeper. And I'm open to it. Do y'all see the difference? Be willing to be the person that God designed you to be. I appreciate you guys listening. Everyone online, I appreciate you listening tonight. To the way that I realized that I had to be someone different. I didn't want to be controlled or held back any longer. I wanted to make those changes. Let's end it tonight the same way we always do, with the Lord's Prayer. Who's the only one that can make a change in your life? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us away from temptation. Deliver us from evil.